This is a short tutorial video to remind you or go over what is expected in a research report from the introduction to the conclusion. So the introduction is the part of the paper where you state what problem you have studied and give some context for that problem. The context is the common knowledge that your reader already has about the problem. Your goal is to remind them of what they already know. You are not providing new information in the introduction. If an average 10th grader wouldn't already know it, then it doesn't belong in your introduction. You should not use any sources, personal experiences, or emotional language in the introduction. It is just to introduce the topic. You always go with old information first and move into the new information. The introduction is one of the shortest sections of the paper. If you have a long introduction, that usually means that you didn't have a lot to say and you were trying to fluff out the easy parts. So here's an example of an introduction. Bears eat too many fish. As most people know, fish make up part of a bear's diet. Many people have seen pictures of bears catching fish in rivers. There's a whole Disney movie, Brother Bear, about two bears on their way to eat salmon. Notice that the first thing in your introduction is your problem statement. That's your opening line. Then you give your context, all common knowledge, things you wouldn't have to research or go online to figure out. These are things that people just know from being alive. Your thesis statement comes at the end of your introduction. Your thesis statement tells the reader what to expect and what they're going to learn in your report. A thesis statement for a research report is not a claim or an opinion. You're not making an argument, you're sharing information. You begin your thesis statement like this. This report will discuss. You can change some words in there, like change the word report to paper or discuss to address or cover if you want to make those changes. Then tell your reader which questions you're going to answer. This is easy. You have already answered a bunch of questions about your problem. Now you just choose which ones you want to write about. You want to choose the ones that you know the most about, that you found lots of information on and great answers for. So, example, this report will discuss why bears eat so many fish. That's a question that will be answered in my report. You probably want to answer 2 to 3 questions about your problem. This way you have enough to write about and you can go in depth on your answers. If you only answer 1 question, that's okay as long as you have enough information to fill 2 to 4 pages on that one question. If you do more than 3 questions, that's also okay as long as you answer each question thoroughly and give a lot of information. If you're just skimming over the top, then that is not acceptable. You will have to change some of your questions from their normal question format into a format that fits into your thesis statement. So here's an example. If the question format is, when do bears eat the most fish? Then the thesis format that will fit inside my sentence is, when bears eat the most fish. And here's the whole example. This paper will discuss why bears eat so many fish, when bears eat the most fish, and what alternatives bears have to eating fish. So here's an example of a complete introduction. You have the problem statement first, then the context. We've already gone over that part. Then, what we've added is this very last sentence starting right here. This last sentence of your introduction is your thesis statement. The thesis statement has to be the last sentence of your introduction, telling the reader what new information they will learn. Alright, next is your body paragraphs. The body paragraph should be the longest paragraphs in your paper. This is where you share information that you learned about your problem, which is the whole point. You start with a topic sentence. Your topic sentence should provide a simple summary answer for one of the questions in your thesis statement. So example, if you have a thesis question of why bears eat so many fish, then you would have a topic sentence for one paragraph that looks like bears eat so many fish because they need protein in their diet. Just a simple one-sentence answer. The rest of your paragraph will then explain and go into detail about the simple answer you gave. So, After your topic sentence, you will quote or paraphrase information from a source. Remember to include an in-text citation so the reader knows where your information comes from. Example, a study of bear metabolisms found that bears require large percentages of protein in order to keep their muscles working. In-text citation has the author's last name and the page number, with the punctuation for the sentence after the parentheses. After you've given the reader your information, you'll explain that information in a way that will be easy for the reader to understand. You will also explain why this information is important to your thesis. So, for example, after I've given that information, I will sum it up by saying this means that most of a bear's food has to have protein in it. The fact that bears need the protein helps explain why they eat so many fish. So here's a full body paragraph example. The topic sentence is highlighted in yellow, the information with the source is in blue, and the explanation is in green. All of this is necessary. I want to mention that this is a very simple body paragraph. Your body paragraph might have a lot more information shared and a lot more explanation. But this is just the format. It's the simplest format for a body paragraph. Bears eat so many fish because they need protein in their diet. A study of bear metabolisms found that bears require large percentages of protein in order to keep their muscles working. This means that most of a bear's food has to have protein in it. The fact that bears need the protein helps explain why they eat so many fish. Just FYI on body paragraphs, you might need more than one body paragraph to answer a difficult question. That's okay. Just break the answer down into pieces, and each piece of the answer will be one topic sentence. You might need to share information from multiple sources to answer a question. That's okay. You can share information from multiple sources in just one paragraph, or you can break it out into multiple paragraphs. Remember to explain your information very carefully. Your reader has not done the same research you have, and they do not have the same knowledge. Make it easy for the reader to understand your information and why you chose to use that information. All of your body paragraphs should be clearly connected to your thesis. Make sure you explain that connection. Conclusion. Okay, this is the easy part. Summarize what the reader has learned. That's the answers to your questions. Finish by suggesting other questions that you did not answer, especially questions that haven't been answered by anyone. The reason we ask questions in our conclusions is because this is, at its core, an information gathering tool. You have looked at other sources to gather information about your problem. Part of learning, in fact, one of the most important parts of learning, is knowing what you have left to learn. That's what you're helping your reader with. This reader has learned and studied the problem by reading your paper. Now they're going to have to think of follow-up questions, other things they want to know. Including possible follow-up questions in your own conclusion is a way to help your reader see the problem more fully, so that they know what they need to learn after reading your report. This also shows that you are thinking of your problem in a global context, that you are not only answering questions, but that you're thinking about the problem in terms of other questions that you haven't been able to answer, the really hard ones. So here's an example of a conclusion. Notice that it starts with the problem statement again, reminding them the context of this whole conversation is the problem that you have noticed. Bears are eating too many fish. The reason they eat so many fish is because fish provide them the protein they need in their diet. They eat the most fish during fish migration and spawning seasons. Currently, bears' only alternative to fish is protein-heavy sage grass, which still has a much lower protein content than fish. This information leads us to ask a few more questions. Notice that this is a transition sentence, leading us from the answer part of our conclusion into the question part. Is there anything humans can do to help both bears and fish? Are there places where bears do not eat fish? Answering these questions will help us understand more about the problem of bears overeating wild fish. The last sentence just sums it up. You don't want to end your paper with a question because it feels unfinished. So you just have one last summation sentence. to close things out. Notice that each of the main points that I shared in this conclusion relate back to my thesis. Why they eat so many fish, when they eat the most fish, and what alternatives they have to eating fish. Everything in your paper must relate back to the thesis. Your conclusion will not share any new information. It will review information that you've shared in a way that's easy to remember, and it will indicate to your reader that there's more information to gather. And that's the end. At that point, you've finished your research report. The most important thing I think you could know is that once you have written a really good thesis statement, your work is half done. You know exactly what you'll be writing about. You know what each paragraph of your essay or of your report will say. And you've got your conclusion planned out. The goal of this report is to share information, not to make an argument, not to share opinions or personal experience. It's to share reliable, valid information. That's what you should be doing in every paragraph of your report.